Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Playbook for Performance podcast. I'm Shauna Corden, your host. My mission is to make work fun again by building better leaders. Now, this week, or this month I should say, we are talking about spring cleaning your work relationships. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries. So last week we talked about what is it that you really want. And this week is a follow-on to that because we're really trying to help you discover what it is that really fuels you, what you want more of, what you want less of. And then we want the boundaries in place to keep the things that you no longer want in your life out. So, what are boundaries? Boundaries are like fences. They keep the good things in and the bad things out. So whether you're talking about a hurricane electric fence with razor wire on top when it comes to prisoners, or whether you're talking about the white picket fence, what we're really thinking about here is that we want, our play balls, our bicycles, our flowers, everything inside the fence. Those are the things we want more of. And outside the fence might be the windblown trash or weed seeds or anything like that. But it really sets apart, this is what's important to me and this is what I want to keep in my system and this is what I want to leave out of the system. So the way that we like to define boundaries in coaching is what people may say or do around you. So if you think about your own portable picket fence, you might think of it as a force field or a bubble or something like that. And we had really good examples of this during COVID because originally we thought 6 feet is all you need. If we have this amount of space, we're going to be just fine. Well, that's not really true. But it was the idea of that, right? If I have this bubble, I will be removed from the ability to catch this illness, okay? So when myself in encountering boundaries, when I work with my clients and we're talking about boundaries, I find that there are two main issues that show up. The first is that people know that there is a line, but they're really uncomfortable in enforcing that line. So that's the first one. We'll talk about that in a minute. The second is they're not so sure what's bothering them. They're upset about an interaction or they feel confused about an interaction, but they are not quite sure really what happened until processing it much later. So let's talk about that first situation. Why are we uncomfortable in enforcing those boundaries? Someone has crossed a line with us, but we don't speak up. Now, we are conditioned to make other people happy. We have been raised to be people pleasers, go with the flow, all of that stuff. Depending on your gender, you may have been culturally raised to act like a lady, don't rock the boat, keep the status quo. It may be different by region, by religion, by family unit, etc. But everyone I've encountered, that cultural programming was a piece of it. Another thing that shows up is we don't realize that no is a complete sentence, right? We feel the need to explain or rationalize or justify how we feel about something, and it's really not necessary. And in general, when people ask, probably the best response is, because I said so. Okay? The fourth, we are afraid of the ramifications that come with it. So we might lose a friend, we might be ostracized, or we might be humiliated in the process if the person's kind of a bully, or they may continue to keep crossing it, and then we feel badly that we ever brought it up in the first place because we're not truly enforcing it. Okay, so those are some of the things that show up why are we so uncomfortable in informing others about our boundaries and enforcing those. The second is that situation that I described earlier, where something's bothering us, we don't quite know what it is. We have to process it before we can figure out what it was. And this is usually an interaction. It's typically not an argument because we have not defended that position or tried to stand behind that fence of ours. And so we can't figure out quite until it's been processed that, like, hey, somebody stepped on my toes and I really didn't like it, and here's exactly what they did. It takes some time to process that. And probably because the boundary has been so fuzzy. You know, we think in our heads, oh, this is a clear red line, no one can cross that. But we have been sending mixed messages over and over throughout time. So my experience has been, both in the past for myself, with my clients, is that people have these permeable fences. It's there, but it's not doing much. It catches the super egregious stuff. We wouldn't see people like, you know, we wouldn't tolerate a racist joke or something like that. But, you know, other things, we might let people make an inappropriate comment or something that's disrespectful, and we just don't really stop them right there in their tracks. We want to have solid fences because, number one, the number one thing that a solid fence or a really good boundary does for us is it gives us space to make decisions that are in alignment with our values, right? Values are the things that are the most important to us. They're our priorities. This is how we operate in the world. And this is how we make decisions. You know, if my family comes first and I have a conflict between work and family, I'm going to prioritize my family. But wait, what if my work priority or my family priority is to be a provider and the work income allows me to do that, right? So we really have to have clarity in order to make these decisions properly. So that's the number one thing a boundary does for us, is it creates the space to give us the time and the analysis to make these decisions. And when our values are really clear, we are able to make decisions easily, right? Any chaos in our life is the result of an unmade decision. Thank you, Regina Leeds. She taught me that years and years ago, and I come back to that adage over and over again. Any chaos in our lives is the result of an unmade decision. So, and it's probably a decision about a boundary. So, let's go back to this. When we act in accordance with our values, we are in integrity. So, in coaching, we talk about integrity not as a moral compass of right and wrong, but we talk about, am I in alignment? You know, are all the planets within me, all my chakras, all my whatever, are they all in alignment so I'm going in the same direction? Okay. So we use this term integrity in a lot of professions, architecture, engineering, etc. And it can be used as a term for true. So it will withstand, an earthquake, things like that. You could also think of it as like coherence. So that whole thing about is the sound wave clear or congruous? Is everything in alignment in that way? So when we have behaviors that are inconsistent with our values, when we're not following through with what we say, then we're out of alignment. So if I say, I want to have an amazing fueled machine for my body, and then I put crap in my mouth, junk food, that is something that is out of integrity. Okay. And we do these things, and when we do those things, it actually reduces our self-esteem. So if you look at the research, the number one contributor to self-esteem is keeping commitments to ourselves. So if I say I'm not going to eat junk food and I eat junk food, that reduces my self-esteem. If I say I'm not going to let people tell racist jokes around me, and I let that come through, if I don't speak up, then again, I'm out of integrity. Okay, so, and that reduces our self-esteem as well. So the second thing that having strong boundaries does for us is it helps us with control. It gives us agency over our own lives. We get to decide what's in the fence, what's outside the fence. And when we have that space, again, we're coming back to space, we learn and we grow. Okay? I had a fascinating conversation last week as part of the research for the book. We're talking about why we engage in arguments. Typically very ego-centered. We're trying to win. It's all about my superior argument, my superior position, my all those things that fuel an argument, but we're not really there to learn. But if we are truly engaged in finding the best answer, trying to learn, then we are not going to argue. We're going to discuss. We're going to share. We're going to exchange. So, very interesting. So, how do we repair or rebuild a fence that's been too permeable? Well, the number one tool we have to do this is to inform people about our boundaries. And this can be a bit scary. I will not lie. This can be a bit scary, but we are going to do this Mad Lib style together. We're going to create a script that you can practice, that you can rehearse. I'd encourage you to find a trusted friend, someone who maybe shares the same boundary as you, that can test you, can practice with you, you can role play so that you can get this out there and really be the person that you want to be. Okay? Again, we're creating this space so that you can make better decisions in alignment with your values, so that you have the space to learn and grow, and you keep what you want inside your fence and keep the stuff you don't want outside your fence. So, it's entirely doable. It is challenging. So let's practice. So Mad Lib style. For those of you who are my international listeners, when I was a kid, it was a great party favor to buy this little tablet called Mad Libs. And it was basically like little stories that were in there. But there were blanks for nouns, verbs, adverbs, etc. And you would get the group, not knowing what the story was, to volunteer what are the nouns, the verbs, the adverbs. And as you put them all in there, then you read the script. And of course, it was great hilarity because you told the story about a dog that could do jumping jacks or something goofy like that. So in this very standardized script, you're going to insert your situations, how you felt, etc., to inform those around you that you have this boundary and you really want to enforce it. Now, couple things about this script. You will notice that this is all about you. All about you. It's wonderful. It's all about you. We are not blaming, we are not accusing, and we are not asking others to change. Because remember, this is not their boundary, it's your boundary. Now, next week, we're going to talk about standards. Standards are your code of conduct on how you behave, what's important to you about how you conduct yourself. That's up to them to figure out if in this boundary conversation, they want to up their game, raise their standards, change how they behave. But for now, we're just talking about boundaries and it's all about you. So here's our example. In the past, you have been, and this is where you could use a couple different phrases, used to, accustomed, unaware that blank, watching violent films bothers me, annoys me, disrespects me. Disrespects me sounds a little bit like an accusation. Be careful with that one. In the future, you can expect me to blank when that happens. So let's pretend that my partner is into watching violent films and it's always bothered me, okay? So my phrase is, in the past, you've been used to me watching violent films with you. However, they bother me. In the future, you can expect, if a violent movie is on television, I'll leave the room and go read. Again, I'm not asking my partner to stop watching violent movies. I'm not saying that violent movies are bad for him. I'm not saying that he's a lesser person for watching violent movies. I'm just saying that they bother me, and that if that happens, I'm going to exit. I'm going to go watch a movie of my own choice. I'm going to read a book. I'm just not going to be there. But I'm not asking him to stop watching the film. Okay? So very important. You're talking about your behavior. You're not accusing or blaming. You're not requesting them to change. And this is all about your agency. What action you are going to take to support your boundaries. Okay? So very, very important. I'm going to ask you to practice with a trusted friend. Now, be prepared. You may get some defensive responses. They might say something like, oh, look who's so Miss High and Mighty now. Oh, look who's so goody two-shoes. Oh, look at blah, blah, blah. Don't waffle. You can just repeat the whole script again if necessary. If you want, you can say, I'm not asking you to change. There's nothing wrong with this. It's not for me. Okay? So next week, we're going to talk about standards. We're going to talk about what it is that you can uplift your own personal code of conduct with, the things that will really serve you, the things that will enrich you and make your life better. So, homework this week, because coaching without action is simply entertainment. What we really want you to do is think about the situations that you encounter most frequently. It could be that the same person takes your lunch out of the community refrigerator at work. It could be that your children speak to you in a way that's less than respectful. I think that's kind of a requirement at teenage years. It could be someone always takes the last piece of cake and it's your piece. Who knows? Okay? But think about those situations that are coming up for you. Maybe it's someone at work that's taking credit for your accomplishments. Or a leader that doesn't acknowledge how you're contributing to the system. Or maybe they just say, good job, instead of, boy, I really liked how you did X, Y, and Z, and it created this result. Maybe you want more specific feedback. Make the request, okay? So, inform them, Mad Lib style. This is what you're used to. This is what you can expect in the future, okay? Again, we can't ask them to change, but we can model what we really want, okay? It could be, I'm going to write a compliment for you, and then you're going to read it to me. That might be stretching it a little bit, but so be sure to identify the areas where boundaries are most likely to be infringed upon. And we see this in our public spaces all the time. Where are the park boundaries being infringed upon? What is it that people are doing that they're not supposed to be doing? Could be that they have their dog off a leash. Could be that maybe dogs aren't supposed to be in that park. Could be that people are smoking in areas that are beyond the boundary of like the front door area that's required, things like that. I'd be very careful about who you inform about your boundaries. I would suggest starting off with those personal relationships, not strangers. We never know how strangers are going to react. So again, we want these things to be your fences. We're not trying to police everybody's fences. We're talking about your fences, okay? Start there. And again, next week we're going to talk about standards. These things that we're talking about this month in the whole spring cleaning concept, these are really things that give you a lot more energy and a lot more space so that you have room to play. And that's where we learn, that's where we grow, that's where we decide we can give back, all those things. So stay tuned. Next week we'll talk about standards as the last segment in this whole spring cleaning your work relationships. Until then, take good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shauna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shaunacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shauna Corden.